Hello, Michael. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andrew. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. What about you?
Doing well. It's a beautiful day today.
That it is. That it is. So I wanted to start off the podcast with kind of what you do. So, Michael, you help people create essentially compelling newsletters. And your tagline is marketing should not feel like selling out. So, for the people who don't know, why don't you walk me through your process and tell us why you're different than everyone else?
Sure. Um, I came to newsletters with a weird path. I started out writing software. Started when I was really young, part of a couple of tech startups in my early career, and always had a curiosity about what made people sell, and probably had an undiagnosed marketing disorder that finally came together where I was burned out on software. I still love to write it, but I'm also a good human English writer. And marketing scratches some of the same itch. It's all about problem solving. It's all about, making the computer do the thing you want it to do, or trying to induce humans to do the thing you want to do, to click or buy or read or laugh or enjoy what you're doing. So I started figuring out what marketing was, and marketing copywriting made a lot of sense to me. I'm more about words than pictures, and I really enjoyed the purity of email, where, unlike with social, it's your own platform. You control when you send, you control who sees what you send. You can take your list wherever you want. It's a marketing asset that you actually own, and so it turns out to be a really compelling way to tell stories and a really powerful way to sell and make money, because you have a lot of you get a lot of audience focus on what you're doing. There's not as many distractions as there are in social, for example.
Yeah, emails in general seem to be very like direct. Whereas social media, you kind of have to beat around the bush. You have to be like, oh yeah, like this is cool. But with email, I can just be like, hey guys, this is what's up. Like, here's what's going on. And I know you typically help people write newsletters primarily.
That's
So
correct.
so that being said, what is inside the newsletters? Like, what do you typically help people with on a marketing front?
It's a process. So the first thing is, what does your audience want to hear? After you've defined who your audience is, who you're writing to, what excites them? What gets them interested in reading? What stories engage them? What can you help them with? And so we're helping our clients come up with a list of what those topics are, so that they don't run out of things to say as a backup. And then we are helping them craft those even incredibly rough drafts into compelling stories, fun stories, things that their audience enjoys reading. Helps them with the transitions from story to sales, because you should always be selling in your emails, even if it's subtle, even if it's small. There still needs to be some sort of ask that you're making of your audience. The technical can be complicated. I mean, things like Substack are pretty straightforward, but with any email marketing tool, there's a lot to consider, from formatting to scheduling and getting all the tagging proper and everything. So we help with that. And we help with basically from the accountability of staying consistent, to crafting the message, to editing and proofing and developing rough drafts and turning them into emails that, from what I hear, people reply back to my client saying, "This was really great, really enjoyed it, really, your email is the one I keep opening over and over again versus others." So it's really gratifying.
Yeah, there's definitely that big thing in email of if I get a dry email and it's a newsletter, I archive it so fast. It's not even funny. But if you take the time and really get people engaged, give value in a sense to them, it's a whole different ball game. And it sounds like, if I remember correctly from what we were saying before, you primarily do the editing. So you let your clients kind of write out a rough draft, and then work on it from there. What, when you're making those adjustments and editing, what's the biggest thing inside of those emails that you change? So like what changes the most and most consistently between clients?
The funny thing that I've noticed across most people's writing is it can start out kind of dry, and then the really interesting part is about a third of the way down. And so very often, even on things like sales pages, rough drafts of marketing sales pages, but definitely emails, the compelling hooks are often about a third of the way. And so we just pull that up to the top. And I think it has a lot to do with people feeling really stuck when they start writing, and they're writing stuff they're not comfortable with. And then they accidentally get into a groove where it starts to feel better. And then they can really bring out their voice and they're having fun. And that's where it starts to get interesting. So that's pretty consistent. And we do a fair share of writing as well, but often it's more for promotional sequences and things like that. The most cost effective thing is when the client can share their own story. And even if it's the most crazy rough draft, they were recording it on the subway on their phone in a crowd, it's better to start there than to start with a blank page.
Absolutely. On that kind of getting crowded, do you do any voice? Like, do you take audio and then convert it to a newsletter a lot? Or do you typically
Hmm.
just do, okay, okay. Would you,
No, we do both. And,
okay,
and I mean, I have a client who I think she almost entirely dictates voice to text, and we get the result of that. Um, I find that's really helpful for some of the writing I do. We encourage that for clients where they like it, but it really depends on what they're comfortable doing. Some are more comfortable just typing, some longhand, some dictation. It just really depends.
okay, okay. I could definitely see how voice to text comes off as a lot more raw. I know Justin, I don't know how to say his last name, Blanco,
Hmm.
something like
I think
that.
so.
I know he
He's
said
awesome.
he likes doing audio to text a little bit just because it feels more authentic. Because
Yeah.
you write and you talk in similar ways, but writing comes off as more formal because you're trained so much with grammar and making sure it sounds right. But it's like audio, I feel like I make so many more mistakes. I have so many more ticks verbally, and that coming off in like text feels very authentic.
Yeah, it's really fun, and that was probably what I am more of a writer than a speaker for speak to text. And one of the things that was so fun to me probably when I got started was realizing I can break rules. I don't have to follow any particular standards. I mean, there's some basic level of English language you should support, but there are intentional things I do that, I'll allow one sentence that begins with and per email. I tend to use the word super at the beginning of a sentence. It makes more sense in context, but I have some ticks I've identified that are consistent with the character I play in my emails, which is not quite me, but based on me.
Mhm.
It's just a style that comes out, and it's really freeing to be able to write in a terse, almost Hemingway-esque way with very conversational style. And people just like that. It's easy to read. It flows well. It can be like poetry sometimes. It's,
I
it's
agree.
delightful. Yeah.
One thing that really irks me about English classes is when I write, it's always to this very formulaic, like it has to be perfect grammar all the time. But for, like, so I was writing, it was essentially sort of a research paper, sort of like a here's an idea kind of paper. And it was trying to get this idea of givers gain economics, which doesn't really matter. But I kept capitalizing that because I was trying to coin it as a term. And my English teacher
Yeah.
hated that. She wanted me to never capitalize it because it's not a proper noun. I was like, but I'm trying to coin it as one. Like, that's the point of the
Hmm.
paper.
Right.
So I think, in a sense, it's really freeing to be able to have some of that leeway there. And especially with writing newsletters or just copy in general, it's amazing. What would you
Hmm.
say, kind of on the email marketing front as well, what would you say are the three things you look for in an email? What, like, A, what analytics are you looking at? And B, what do you think is going to help get people those analytics?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, for analytics, open rate, which people talk about a lot and mine are high, is really only a measure of how good your subject line is, primarily. And secondarily, your reputation with your readers. If your readers consistently enjoy what you're sending, they're going to open even if your subject line isn't great. Subject line is still really important, especially in promotions. The thing to really pay attention to is clicks and even more to replies. Someone goes to the bother of hitting reply and sending you a note back, either friendly, curious, even angry. That means you got somewhere. That means you really hit a nerve, and I assume probably 10x more at least people felt something similar and didn't bother doing one of those things. So those are the things which are hard to track because the tools don't typically tell you when you get a reply. You have to track that yourself. But thinking about that holistically, when you're getting good dialogue with your audience, that's really positive. Um, Sales rate, of course, but before you get there, replies are super important.
Yeah.
So you're asking questions, you're you're being maybe a little controversial, you're saying things that the other sweet spot is really getting in your reader's head and saying what they're thinking but they're afraid to say. Those are the kind of things where they realize, oh, you're on my team. I can you get me, and that's really powerful.
Yeah. I like that's just a really good marketing thing as well. Just being able
Hmm.
to, I guess, empathize with them as the reader
Right.
and just be like, hey, I'm here with you.
Yeah.
What would you say are, like, if you're writing an email and you're going through editing a client's email, what are the three things that you want to edit the most to maximize for specifically click rate?
I want short paragraphs because I
Okay.
want readability. The key is good subject line gets them to open, good first line, your hook gets them to start reading, and every line after that is just a puzzle to get them to keep reading, keep reading, keep reading to the end. Um, so the story has to be interesting because I can't just start with a click here at the beginning. That's not very interesting. Um, Minimalist newsletters do some interesting things there, but in a general story-based email, you're going to have that farther down. So I need them to read to that far. And then I need the story to point to why this is interesting to click on. You know, say it's a registration page for a workshop you're going to do. There may be an email where I simply do straight sales on that workshop and just list out benefits. There's a few emails like that. Then there's emails that are more story based on some angle on the workshop, on some benefit or some problem that people are having that it solves. And the trick is, and something we help with, is those transitions from your story into, and here's what I'm going to be helping you with next week. Come to this event, click here, register. And so we help with both the strategy and the writing, the messaging process to help induce those clicks to happen and get more, more butts in seats at events and things like that.
Right. I know flow is a really, like you said, flow is a really big thing, getting people to continue to read.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't tell you how many newsletters I've looked at and just went, there's no way this converts. There's zero chance. Because you get like a paragraph in and it's just regurgitating the same thing over and over. And it's like, this could have been a paragraph. That's it. But go ahead.
Well, one of the things that's key is email doesn't have to do the whole job. Email doesn't have to do the entire job of taking the reader from, I don't know anything about this thing you're selling, to pulling out my wallet and buying. Email only has to do a small piece, which is convey the idea and get me to click on the next thing. And then your sales page, your landing page can do the selling. But if you try and cram all of that into the email, that puts a lot of responsibility on your email. And it can work. It does work. It's also really hard. So when you're trying to do too much, when you're trying to put too much in one email, or if you feel compelled because you haven't emailed in a while and you've got 10 different things going on, so you think, I'll write a big email with 10 different things. Well, you might get a click, but I don't know what they're clicking on or why. What happened to make them click on that one thing?
Exactly. And that's kind of the
So
idea of
really,
a
yeah,
sales funnel as well, right? Of like, you want to get people from one step to the next step. It's warming up your leads because you want to take someone from knowing nothing about the product to caring about the product to wanting to buy the product to buying the product. And you have to get them
right,
through all of those stages. And quite honestly, the emails, newsletters, that's really just warming up leads. That's all it is. Is it's taking someone from, hey, I don't know this to, oh, this is interesting, or I care about this. And I want to say 9 times out of 10, newsletters, as much as they sell, are also a branding play because it gets people to, let's say it's a personal newsletter, it gets people to know you. If it's about the company, it gets people to know the values of the company. So it's just as much a branding play as it is a selling play.
yeah. I can't count the number of times I've had a good introductory call with someone. It's basically a pre-sales call, and we'll talk about email and what they're doing and what I'm doing, and I'll say, hey, I have this email marketing newsletter. You want to join? And they'll say, sure. And when I talk to them again in 2 weeks, it's really warmed them up. Having a really good, nice welcome sequence to let people know what's coming, to let people know what you, the newsletter writer, are about and how you help people and sharing some fun stories. It's a great way to warm up sales leads. It's really, I get a lot of business. I mean, I would get business. I believe I get a lot more business and a lot more sales because of even just doing that.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that. And it's so low friction too. Like, how many websites do you see where all it says at the bottom is check out our newsletter and it's just an email, click send? And 9 times out of 10, it autofills too. So really, you're just clicking a button. Like,
Right.
it's so easy to subscribe to newsletters and it's so beneficial, especially for salespeople when you get on that sales call.
Right.
Hey guys, post-production Andrew here. I'm just cutting into the podcast here to let you know I do have a newsletter in addition to the podcast. This is not just the only thing I do. The newsletter is just a 3-to-1 style. It's for digital marketing. So if you're interested at all in that, you'll get 3 weekly insights or 3 weekly tips. You'll get 2 news, so what's kind of going on in the industry, what's going on, new CMOs, etc. And you'll get one of my client case studies, kind of what we did for them, how we helped them out. So if that is at all something you're interested in, feel free to subscribe to the newsletter. The link to that is tuckercmdigital.com/newsletter. So link will also be in the description. Feel free to check that out. And back to the podcast.
I wanted to talk to you about AI as well, because you quoted in a LinkedIn post, serving Velveeta in your Michelin 3-star restaurant is like using ChatGPT to write your marketing. So talk to me about this.
I still stand by that. Um, ChatGPT can do amazing things. I had an early fascination as a young person with the fact that computers could take English and do something with that, and that field stalled for decades. And then suddenly, November 2 years ago, OpenAI opens this new thing, and my God, you can communicate with it, and it talks back, and it's friendly, and it's oh so seductive in making you like it and making you like what it says and how powerful it appears to be. On the other hand, it really sucks at writing marketing. It's good with cliche. It's good with coming up with something like the average of what it has seen over the internet. And yes, I have tried to say, write like Eugene Schwartz, or you are like master copywriter this, and it'll kind of do a parody of that style. but I have rarely, even with the best of ChatGPT 4.0 Turbo or whatever it's called, um, it's hard to get it to write copy that's really good. For ideas, I think it's helpful. It can remind me of all the things I've forgotten that I've learned at one point. Um, I've asked it questions about things and it's told me, yeah, do this. And it's like, yeah, that's an idea. That's fine. Um, so it's progressing at a huge rate. The thing it can't do is tell your stories.
Mm-hmm.
It can't fabricate how you feel about the funny thing in the podcast you just heard. And I think you'll always do a better job of that. Now, 5 years from now, it may do a very good job playing a character who could be an effective marketer in some areas. But I don't feel any long-term concern for my job security.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. So I know we talked about this before, but I use AI in my essentially the Tucker CM digital newsletter. And that's essentially what I use, A, for training, so that I can train without having to put that on clients, and B, so that I can experiment with things. So here's what I've kind of found. I've been A/B testing what gets opens, and when I handwrite the newsletter, and then I give it to AI and say correct the grammar, I get a way better open rate. People seem more interested, and this is primarily with the title. So just to specify that. So I get a better open rate when I do it that way. The one thing, so the newsletter is structured in this way. It's a 3-2-1 style newsletter. And 3 tips, 2 essentially news stories or something interesting, and 1 just client case study. So what we did for the client, how we helped them out, or just something about the client. So what I've found is the 3 tips, if I handwrite the tips and do the exact same thing and just correct the grammar, it doesn't make a big difference. I get a better open rate if I write it versus compared to having the AI completely write it. So as long as I'm writing the bulk of it, it's fine. It doesn't seem to matter as much in terms of click rate for the news stories. My guess is that's just because it's trying to give unbiased information, and AI is really good at that, as is.
Right.
But it's the same thing for the tips as it is for the client case study. So as long as I write it out first and kind of say, hey, this is what we did, this is what worked for them, maybe it can help you, and this is what they do, I get a better click rate as well. So I agree that AI is useful in portions of writing, but I definitely don't think it can properly write marketing copy yet. What would you...
It's awesome for speech to text, and
Yeah.
it is awesome for grammar. And it can come up with lots of bad ideas, which I bring that up because if you're ever stuck writing a subject line for your email, start writing bad subject lines. Come up with as many dumb ideas, stupid ideas for subject lines as you can think of, just on a piece of paper or in a word processing document. Keep writing them, and you'll find you can't do it forever. You will start to accidentally write subject lines that are better and decent and interesting. And, it can certainly kickstart that process too.
I agree. AI is really good for getting a start, but it can't get a finished product for you at all.
Yeah.
I know you've done a little bit, you do some web design or have done web design in the past. What are your thoughts on blog posts in AI? Because I know a lot of companies don't write blog posts for people. They write blog posts for getting ranked. So what are your thoughts on that?
SEO just doesn't fit in my head. I believe in SEO. I believe in search rankings, and I don't have the temperament for I just don't have the patience to learn the games required. Other people do. I really respect that. I've seen some amazing work done to rank on Google. if the blog posts we're having to write are so the machines can consume them, I think Google has already said they're doing filtering to try and identify AI-based content, though I have no understanding of how one AI can detect another AI. That's mystifying to me. But let's assume they're good at that. I don't know. I see a lot of pretty boring blog posts already. I cook a lot, and so I look for recipes online. And there's only a couple sites I can stand that aren't just full of ads and full of long, boring boilerplate text that probably ranks better, but is really annoying to try and read through. Mm-hmm. So, there's certainly an SEO-based blog strategy. There's also a blog strategy for identifying the key articles that your ideal client needs to see and making sure they're prominently on your website. And that's different than kind of the modern blogging of, you should put out a new blog article every month and it's going to be this and this. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There's a CEO strategy. I don't understand it. AI is generating them. Sure, you could churn that out faster. I think Google will catch on because they do still claim that their search results matter and that they feel there's a financial benefit to returning good search results. Mm-hmm. So I think they will keep trying to identify good sources of information and entertaining sources of information.
Yeah, I agree. So SEO is one of those things that my company offers, but I don't personally do it because we have people in the team that are significantly better than me. And it's specifically that copywriting aspect, like keyword research. Yes, I can do basic website copy, sure. But when it gets to the blog posts, you have to find specifically what it is. You can't keyword fill, which is just writing it as much as you can. But you also have to put it in enough to rank for the right keywords. So it's that really annoying balance of where do I write it? How do I write it? What do I all do? And I think an AI could get really good at this. But like you said, the AI is, I think kind of mentioned this earlier about AI, and AI in a really simplistic form is the average of everything that it's given. This isn't exactly true, but just for simplicity's sake, that's what it is. So if you find the average constantly, you're just creating average blog posts. You're not going to rank higher than whatever. So you still have to have that human aspect to really, really do well in SEO is going to be kind of my insights on that. But AI can get you like 70% of the way there. And if it's a tenth of the price, smaller businesses are going to love that, eat it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. An AI that could be my SEO assistant, that would be delightful. Have it be able to tell me, have it do all the boring stuff, all the stuff I'm not interested in, and say, okay, this is what you need to cover, and then have it understand what the search engines are looking for and be able to analyze what I've done and say, yes, and we need more of this and we need more of this. And it's like, okay, sure, fine. And real good SEO costs a lot of money. So if someone can help me, as you said, as a small business with the basics, that is very valuable.
Have you seen the new plugins for WordPress with SEO, like rank math and what they're adding for AI?
I haven't seen what they're adding for AI. I've looked at rank math. I use a different one that's similar. What are they doing?
So they have essentially where you can write out with AI. So you just click the AI button and it automatically gives you, I want to say it's 3 options, and then you pick one.
Okay.
So it's really interesting to see that it can write some of this SEO copy, but then it can also give you a judgment on how good it is, because it's essentially trying to create an approximation of where it would rank on Google and how well it would do. Mm-hmm. So it's weird to see that it's able to do that and somewhat effectively, which is scary. But again, I don't think it's going to do the best of the best because there's only so much you can do with AI.
Well, and that's my question then is have you guys tried that out in live situations? Are you seeing it rank even at a basic level better than not?
I personally haven't tried it with anything
Okay.
live, but
Hmm.
I'm willing to take a bet that it ranks worse compared to human written if it's a good
Sure.
writer.
Sure.
Granted that there's a caveat there, right? You need to be a good writer for SEO,
Hmm.
but especially when you're paying an agency for it, there's just so much volume with the writer, they're almost guaranteed to do well.
Hmm.
So yeah, I want to see more. I want to see more data on that. Like, is it ranking better? Is it not ranking better? Even if it's
Hmm.
anecdotal, like I'll gladly take it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's my thing with most of the AI and marketing things is people talk about what they're doing and they'll say and the client loves it. Well, the client loves it because they didn't have to write it themselves. The client likes the look of the words. And has anyone tested it for real? Like, does it beat the control in sales tests? Is it bringing in significantly more revenue? And maybe if it costs a tenth of the much to do and it performs worse, that's still a net positive versus paying the other higher price for the human writer. But I I I haven't seen a lot of cases where people are saying, yes, we're better than break even.
Yeah.
Because if they were doing that, that would be the thing you would advertise is we did 10 times more revenue because of this AI technique. And I'm not aware of anyone making those claims.
Yeah, I haven't seen anyone either, specifically on the SEO one.
Yeah.
One thing that
Yeah.
I'm really curious about is at what point is AI going to be able to dynamically change text on websites? And so you can like hyper tailor the copy on a website to someone. I'm curious to see
Well,
what'll happen there.
yeah. In a way, Google has done that for AdSense all along. It's not a generative AI per se, but certainly all of the little auctions that go on behind the scenes that choose what ads are served to us. Um, and I thought Facebook had some AI based advertising model that in early tests was really good at draining your ad budget, but I presume the idea was just making more test cases, generating an infinite number of test cases and A/B testing all of them to optimize. So you've got a million monkeys on typewriters typing randomly, and eventually you get a good ad. It should work in theory, and you could certainly pre-generate these in batches, so it doesn't have to be quite real time for the AI part. Again, it's expensive, and if it works better, that'd be great, but that remains to be seen for now.
Yeah,
Someday,
I definitely think
someday.
it'll be really interesting as people
Hmm.
start coming out with stuff like that. I honestly, I really want to try it in some of my websites, see if I can hard code some, like with the ChatGPT API, and be like,
Hmm.
oh, hey, I see these cookies, throw it in ChatGPT and have it give a response, and just see what happens. Be Write a prompt, API it, and then say, hey, come back. I That won't be efficient. It'll screw up the load time on a website, but I really want to see what happens because I think it would be really interesting.
Hmm. Agreed.
Have you done anything playing around with AI at all in terms of programming, or have you get?
Um, nothing like that. I have my own wrapper I wrote in Python around the API, um, just because I didn't really feel like paying the 20 a month for a ChatGPT Plus account. And that gave me access to ChatGPT 4 Turbo several months before anyone else outside of the developer community. So that's been fun. Um, but that's just playing around. I'll sometimes take my emails, or if I get a huge bulk of research for a client, I'll throw it in there and see what it thinks as a summary or see what it thinks as some highlights. And that can seem valuable. That can seem interesting. Um, I think it does an okay job of summarizing that, and I've used some of that as reference. Um, I still want to double check everything. Um, because if you do that in the legal sense, you generally go to jail or you get sanctioned by the judge or it makes up something for you. So you have to be careful. But yeah, I really appreciated when ChatGPT 4 Turbo got its much bigger window so that you could throw in 50 pages of documents. And it costs to do that, but it can actually process it, and it's interesting.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't done anything like that in terms of. Oh, it says I'm reconnecting here. The app is undergoing it. Okay.
I
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay. I just had a weird reconnection thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's really interesting though with AI and using the Python with the API because you can just play around. You can throw anything in it, literally anything. Mm-hmm. Have you played around with images yet in terms of AI?
A little bit. I found that I've only played with Dolly so far, OpenAI's, and I just couldn't find the images were that interesting. I may not have understood how to prompt them correctly. Their new video thing, Sora.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it's called. The test videos there are pretty amazing. I mean, they're weird and they're quite frighteningly realistic seeming in cases, or not. So there's a lot of really interesting work, and imagery is certainly getting better. The idea of doing your own personal deep fake for headshot photography, like for your LinkedIn profile, I think is an interesting idea, though I don't know how stable that can be.
Yeah, I see that a lot, and most of them I was playing around with it, but you have to pay for them, and I can't commit to paying like $25 just to see what the images come out as. So
right.
I was playing around with Midjourney as well. Midjourney does a really cool job. That one I see a lot more.
Is that the one on Discord?
Yes.
Okay.
That one, I think it does a really good job of paintings. Realistic isn't so great, but anything in terms of painting or like a 3D-esque style, it does a really good job of.
Yeah, and it's interesting how, in some ways, to me, the imagery reads better than the writing does. I don't quite understand why. And I am concerned about the copyright issues that all the training data has been from, we just found some stuff we could see on the internet and trained it all. So I'm curious where the legal cases come out there. I know OpenAI is now quickly inking deals with all the major news outlets so they can scrape from them legally and try and mitigate the legal backlash over that.
Mm-hmm. But that's the problem with a scraper for AI, right? Because when you're scraping the internet, you can't cherry pick what you're scraping.
Right.
You basically just get everything. And let's say something's categorized wrong. Well, congratulations, it's categorized wrong in the data set that you're using to train the data. So now, not necessarily everything, but if that happens multiple times, it's more likely to categorize different things incorrectly.
Yeah, and there's some security risks there too, because if there are threat actors who would definitely want to poison AI training data for pretty subtle malicious reasons. I mean, I think about the uses of AI for writing code and the training of it for writing code. There have always been subtle bugs you can add to software that violate security principles, and this is just another way of doing it. And I'm sure that's a very hot research topic at the state actor level, US, Russia, China, and so forth.
I can definitely picture some really, really like angsty 16-year-old sitting in their computer, just playing around and just generating thousands of images that are categorized completely wrong, throwing them on the internet, making sure everyone can see it. And now, well, the AI screwed up just because this 16-year-old had a little too much fun.
I had read that when Google search results were first coming out with AI, and there was the news reports of the Google search said to put rocks on my pizza. Well, apparently that was a joke someone made on Reddit some years ago. And it just got sucked into the training data, and the AI thought that was funny and served it out. So you never know what's going to get picked up.
Yeah. That was honestly a terrible idea. Of all things, picking Reddit. Like, Google, you know what's on there. Why are you. Yeah.
They're desperate for words. They're desperate for human-generated words because now they've consumed all the words.
Mhm.
There is no more training data to use for our AIs, and they still aren't smart enough yet. So I don't know what you do.
Yeah. I guess you just have someone sit behind a computer and write? I don't know.
Sure.
There you go.
Sure. In the future, we will all be employed by OpenAI writing training data for their AI.
Perfect. That's exactly what we need. All right. One of the things that I was really interested in asking you about was you were a speaker at WordCamp in 2018. So it seems that you were representing Linear Worlds, which is your company, correct?
That was the first company name.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So what was kind of your experience at WordCamp? Talk to me about it.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I met some great people. Picked up. I don't think I got any clients per se, but I met some people I'm still in touch with, and we've done some client referrals since then. It's a wonderful community. I really had a good time. Speaking there was they had some need for some beginner tracks, and so I gave a beginner talk on something. Met some interesting people doing stuff I wasn't doing, so it was great to learn new things overall. I really enjoyed it. It was a shame. Among the many things that we lost with the pandemic, we lost a lot of WordCamps, and that was a shame. I know they're trying to start them back up again, and I think there's one here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area in a few months. But
yeah. WordCamps are really cool. I think, like the idea of it, because so many people use WordPress, that just getting people together and being able to talk in general about, like, even if it's not WordPress, maybe it's just websites in general, maybe it's React, whatever. But getting that community together in, I guess I don't exactly know what way because I've never been to one, but just getting the community together, if you will.
It's a really fun group. There's people doing commercial work, there are people doing free work. Just the vibe of the I've gone to 3 of them, I think. Just a very friendly, welcoming environment. It was a lot of fun, and very affordable too, as conferences go.
Yeah. What did you give your presentation on?
I honestly don't remember. It was a beginner track thing. I think it was setting up your WordPress site from day one, just basic best practices. This was a case where they had provided a curriculum, and I was happy to have an opportunity to go up in front of a crowd and speak. It wasn't anything more grandiose than that.
Okay. That makes sense. I also just wanted to ask about that one. So one of the other ones that I wanted to ask about was a different company. So like I said, you've had quite a few businesses. But one that stuck out to me was Rocket Life. So just a quote, it's an early digital photo sharing web service that peaked at 25 million monthly users. So talk to me about that. What you do.
Yeah, that was my last startup. That built out of a couple of previous projects. That was a group of people I knew for many years at some previous companies, and we formed a company to do software to create custom photo gifts, calendars, mugs, photo books, and things. The 25 million monthly users, those weren't paying. That was measurable based on a deal we had with a large company that was distributing our software for free. And so there were people using it, and we got some small share of that revenue, not enough to be viable. And I learned it was in that world where I began to be really curious about marketing and how to more effectively communicate with your users, how to more effectively draw in paying customers. Because at that point in my life, I didn't really know what marketing was and didn't know anyone who did or respected it. And I found that was a lack ultimately. So That was back in my software days.
Mhm.
It was a thing. It was the impetus for me changing what I was doing, and now
Okay.
I'm very happy with what I'm doing.
Fair. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm kind of curious, how many partners were they? Or how many co-founders?
Um, there were in the final version of it, there were 7 partners
Okay.
and a handful of contractors beyond that.
Okay. Because I kept seeing every time I would click on it, it's like partner, and I'm like, there's another one? What's going on?
Yeah, yeah. I learned a lot about business from that whole world. A lot of what not to do, what I wouldn't do again.
Mhm.
And that could be a whole different podcast.
What so it seems like it's still running. Did people jump ship or
Rocket Life is no longer a going concern.
okay.
Some of them formed a new thing doing something vaguely similar to what it was before. I don't really follow that anymore,
Okay.
but Rocket Life as a business entity is no longer in existence so far as I know.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. What was
Yeah.
kind of the turning point? What made you jump ship, go, hey, I want to do something else?
Um, I didn't see a viable path forward in that startup. Um, and I was frustrated that software was so hard to build in a team environment, in that team environment. And I was really curious what else I could do. Solo, I didn't want to start my own software venture. That was just an expensive hobby. And, there had to be easier things to do. So I played with web development for a while, played with making landing pages and websites for people with WordPress. And that's a fun area and pretty commoditized. And then as I got deeper and deeper into the question of what is marketing, I learned what is copywriting. And oh, you can just write words and make money. Okay, that sounds like a pretty pure way to go. And I just kept going down that rabbit hole. And email made the most sense to me. Social media still doesn't quite make sense to me, partly my age, partly my interests, and I'm not as visually interested. Threads is interesting. Twitter is really hard right now, but Threads as a pure text platform, mostly the Instagram sibling, is interesting to me. If Buffer ever gets an integration, Buffer is a social media scheduling application. If they ever get an integration with Threads, I'll probably play with posting on Threads with that. See what it's like there.
Doesn't Threads have a pretty small user base though?
Um, I don't know what their active user base is.
Okay.
They got a huge initial base because they simply made all of their Instagram users Threads users. So what I don't know is how active the base is. But I like what I see there. And you don't need millions of people to make money online. And circling back to email, you don't need a 10,000 person email list to make money online. You can be successful with a much, much smaller list, um, and good strategy and good writing. So even if Threads is like 10 million people, if they're nice, if they're interesting, that could be a cool community to hang out in.
Yeah, I agree. Circling it on the you don't need a big community. That's a really big thing that I see so many people make a mistake with. They'll come to me and they'll be like, I have 14,000 people on my email list. And I'm like, how many of those people read your emails? Let's look at the open rate. And then it's like a 3% open rate. And you go, hey, did you just scrape these emails? So you have to know like who your customer base is. You have to tailor it to them. That's the other big thing with B2B businesses and LinkedIn. You're not going to have as big of a following, but the following that you get is going to be more engaged than Instagram or Facebook because of the intent, right? It's not about the number of people. It's about the quality of people.
Right. Right. And that's the thing with that big email list is you do want your readers to be opening your emails because If in your case they're only getting a 3% open rate, if enough of those 14,000 subscribers are on Gmail, Gmail will observe that you're sending an email to maybe 10,000 people on Gmail and 3% are opening it. Gmail doesn't think very much of that. Gmail thinks that your emails aren't very interesting. They might be promotion, they might be spam, and Gmail is going to classify them that way, which only compounds your problems. And so, if anything, you need to go in and prune out all the people who are not reading regularly to both shrink your list, which saves you money, and boost your open rate, which also makes Google's spam filter happier.
Mm-hmm. That's something that I started learning is you can create essentially an automation where you can create a separate list. So segmentation. So all you say is for the next like 10 emails or so, everyone who opens it, create a new list and throw them in there. And then after that, we just send it to the new list. Because that'll prune like 90% of people who aren't opening it. And the problem is you started with that big list. And so you're starting off on the wrong foot and you have to spend so much time fixing it. So please don't do that.
Don't do that. And it actually isn't as bad as you make it out to be, because you can look at, with most of the tools I know of, you can look at who hasn't opened an email in a certain number of times. So if I take all the people who don't appear to have opened an email in the last 2 months, and take all the rest of them, put them on a separate email sequence that asks them some pointed questions of, hey, are you still here? Click this link to let me know. Then you take the result of that and that goes back into your main list. Mm-hmm. You might lose 90% of those 14,000 people, but that's okay if the ones you're left with actually want to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. I agree. The other problem with having a huge email list is a lot of different like email service providers, I guess is one way to phrase it, charge you based on the amount of people that you have on your list. And right. So if you're just getting a bigger list for bigger list's sake, you're paying more to send emails to people who don't care.
Yes. Back in my startup days, we claimed to be proud of the fact that we had a 200,000 person email list. And we were paying MailChimp a couple $1,000s a month for it, probably 3 or 5. And then we got into looking at that and it's like, well, the open rate's like 10%. Yeah. And you know, it's easy to burn a lot of money that way. So yes, it does cost more. However, if you have a large engaged list, you can make serious money from that. If you have 10,000 people on your list, you're getting a good open rate, you're getting clicks and replies, and you're not making money, then something's wrong and that can be fixed. But if you're starting from that point of a really engaged large audience, that's a business opportunity. Yeah. No question.
I agree. I just had to give a quote for some perspective there as well, for someone who has, I think it's a 24,000 person list, give or take. And for text and for email, it came out just for the software. It came out to like 625, 635, like somewhere in there, for just a month, just to have the software without emails. It's wild to me how expensive some of that stuff can get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So again, if that is an engaged audience, that's a easily affordable business expense. I'm not worried by that at all. But if you're not getting if you're paying that, if that's not getting covered by sales, then something's wrong.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Well, I don't have anything else there. Anything else? So where can people find you? And
best way to find me, best way to reach out to me is on michaelhelmke.com. You can download my newsletter essentials checklist there. It gives you all the pointers you need to get your email list started and best practices. You can also join my email newsletter list there as well. And you can reach out to me at michaelhelmke.com. Full name and address in the show notes.
Yep, perfect. Perfect. I'll link everything, and I can attest that the website has some great pointers on there, some that I hadn't heard after writing for like 4 months, I want to say, give or take. So it's got some good info.
Well, I really, yeah, good. And I do enjoy your newsletter. You're doing a really great job at it, and I like the format and what you're doing with it. It's really interesting.
Thank you. I appreciate it.